this is Ruth Theresa with One Inspiring Woman, and today I'm answering a Dear Ruth Theresa question that came from a client of mine, and I talked to her, and she was like, yes, you can do a video on this, and she goes, it might really help her to kind of hear it over and over again. So this is part for you and part for her, but I want you to understand there is amazing energy of this, and hopefully a great insight into things around you. So my client, when she called and we were talking during a session about her being the scapegoat in the family, and she was like, really, I'm the scapegoat? And I said, really listen to the stories that you've told me so far. You know, why am I always blamed for this? Why am it's always my fault? Even if I had nothing to do with it, why is it my fault? And I was like, usually that's the scapegoat in a family. And we had already figured out on other appointments that she had had that her mother is narcissistic. And so she was like, why? And I said, because the narcissistic personality cannot take the blame for anything. And so they need to point that at someone else. And for you and your family, that's you. So you are always in the wrong. You are always told that you're wrong. It's always your fault. It's one of those, like, you feel humiliated. It's kind of like set up. So no matter what you do or say, it's kind of like pointed at you. It's designed to kind of make you feel devalued, to make you feel invalidated. And a lot of times, like, you may get a little bit of good energy, but most of the time it's the bad negative energy. It's your fault. You caused all this. You're the reason why this isn't happening. You're the reason why that didn't happen, or whatever else. It's kind of like you're the scapegoat. You're the one that's blamed. Everybody blames on you. And they usually learn that from the narcissistic in the family. The narcissistic in the family kind of picks their scapegoat. They also have other positions of, like, the golden child and the middle child or whatever else. Like, they have some other spots. And the middle child, it usually goes from like golden child to scapegoat back and forth. But a lot of times in the family, as they kind of maintain like these, like, you're really this. And so you may get a little bit of that golden child treatment for once in a while. Most of the time you're the scapegoat and everything is blamed on you. And a lot of times when you talk to the other family members, like, I really am tired of being the scapegoat. I feel like everything is always my fault. They will talk you out of it 9 ways to Sunday. And they're like, no, that's not the way it is. That's not the truth. And it's one of those, because what happens when you're not there, the scapegoat's not there, they're going to find someone else to scapegoat. They're going to find someone else. And eventually, it's one of those, more and more people start leaving. It's one of those, it's going to get to that person. They're like, no, don't blame me for it. So that's kind of the interesting part about it, is that the manipulation, like the abusive cycle, they want you to stay in it because it's like, this is normal. This is what we understand. Like, you're the scapegoat. This is the golden child. This is the middle child that goes between the golden child and the scapegoat. So it's like everybody has their place. And it's one of those, but when you kind of start firmly maintaining your boundaries with your family and kind of changing that. So for her, what we started to do was, I said, limit the time that you're around your family. That's number one. So if you go to a family function or whatever else, go for a limited time and then leave. As soon as it starts getting a little bit awkward, like, boom, it's time to go. And so she was like, okay. And I said the first couple of times she didn't do so well. She didn't get out the house. And I said, that's okay. Because a lot of times what they're doing is they will not only block your energy in the space because they don't want you to leave. A lot of times they'll block your car so you can't leave. So I was like, park around the corner, park down the street, park where you have to walk a little bit to get there. And then it's one of those, as soon as you're ready to leave, don't let anything stop you. Like, have your purse by the door, and so just grab it and go. Don't wait. And so that's kind of one of those energies of, like, when you're kind of had enough of it and you're going to have to limit the amount of time. It may be, this is a good day, and so you get to stay for 30 minutes, or it could be a horrible day and you only stay for 5 minutes. And that's up to you. That's your choice. That's your boundary. As soon as everybody starts blaming me for something, I am out of there. Kind of that energy of it. So it's kind of like that's part of it, and that's kind of like, yes, we can do all of that. And usually when you start making those new boundaries, you will start getting like text messaging, phone calling, passive aggressive side comments, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And it's one of those, like, why'd you leave? You should have stayed. You know what I'm saying? Like, grandma wanted to see you or whatever else. And they keep kind of like pulling you back into the family. And that's their way of going like, I don't want to replace you in this section. You're the scapegoat and this is where you belong. And it's one of those, because if not, usually that middle child is now going to be more the scapegoat than they were before. And a lot of time the abuse of that is kind of like, no. I will tell you, one of the things is a lot of times when that scapegoat starts to leave, the narcissistic starts kind of using kind of like a smear campaign against them or a discrediting campaign. Well, they've always been a liar. They've always done this. They've always kind of invalidating anything that you say. Well, she always says that she's blamed, but she is so not blamed. It's always so-and-so or whatever else. They're going to do it to kind of get everybody else on their side, so you feel like you have no alliance in the family. And that kind of ends up kind of like usually pushing that scapegoat even further out of the house than anything else. I will tell you kind of what happens usually is there's a triangulation, and I did a whole video on triangulations with abusers and narcissistics. Is there's usually like conversations like one-on-one where the you'll tell something to somebody and then it'll get back to the narcissistic and they're going to flip that all around, so you're the one that's now look like you're the bad person, or changing the energy of things, and it all adds more to the disagreements and the arguments and the fussing and the fighting, and usually still you're being blamed for it. And there's always that one thread of truth in there. I always tell people there's one thread of truth. There's always that thread of truth in there. So it's kind of their narcissistic behavior wanting you to stay in the energy and kind of designing it. So if you push back and you try to make healthy boundaries, they're going to jump all over it. They're, you know what I'm saying, like anything that happens, it's going to be even more your fault. And now it's your fault because you're not there. And it's one of those, like, it kind of just keeps going and going. And a lot of times, like, the scapegoats will eventually usually get completely out of the family and literally only come back once in a while. And I will tell you that this is kind of very heartbreaking. One of the things I totally told my client about, as you're starting to make this break from your family, get a counselor, get a therapist that you can talk to. I can tell you about the energy, but you really got to get with a counselor so that you can start working on some of this, because a lot of times that scapegoat never stop blaming themselves. They beat up on themselves constantly because that's what they were raised in. That's what they have always known. It's always my fault. If no one else is taking the blame, I'll take it because I'm just used to it. And a lot of times, like, they really have to kind of get rid of that trauma thinking and kind of literally do a 180 with their energy of like, oh, it's not always my fault. It's not always my fault. And a lot of times it takes them a lot of therapy to kind of get out of that energy. Usually once the abuser realizes that they don't really have control over the scapegoat anymore, or the scapegoat has completely left whenever that happens, the new scapegoat will help kind of bring in a new kind of like era of now it's always your fault. And it can make that new scapegoat feel super insecure and kind of like, I feel like I'm depowered. I have no power whatsoever. And a lot of times they'll start reaching out for that scapegoat that's already gone. And so it's kind of interesting. A lot of times, like, I didn't believe you before about any of this, and now I'm your biggest supporter because now they're doing it. And a lot of times, like I said, the family will start just separating little by little because of the narcissistic scapegoating and abusing that energy, and almost like a traumatized, like you're constantly at battle with everybody else and what's going on. I will tell you, usually the main narcissistic person is really still trying to manipulate the remaining family members, usually trying to keep you away, because now that you've kind of like come aware of the energy and kind of fixing things for yourself, they don't want anything to do with you. Now that you're getting healthy and working on your own self, getting some therapy for you, they don't want anything to do with you, because you might contaminate the other people and thinking like, oh, she got therapy, I need therapy, and maybe we can fix all of this, because that narcissistic energy does not want to change. They do not want to change. it's like if they were to change or admit that they were wrong, they would kind of implode. I would just like, it happens that way. So it's kind of affects other people in leaving, but a lot of times that person, the first scapegoat, and sometimes even the second or the third or the fourth, are really leaped on a ton of guilt for leaving, a lot of shame for leaving, a lot of, you know what I'm saying, like kind of this crazy energy of like you left your family and now, you know what I'm saying, like we have nobody, no one loves us, no one supports us or whatever else. And the hard part with that is they were kind of more pushed out and trying to save themselves more than anything else. And it's kind of like there's such a shame in that, and it really shouldn't be. A lot of times that scapegoat has a lot of guilt that they've left, a lot of energy of like, I want to be part of the family, but I can't handle this anymore. And so a lot of times like that scapegoat really pushes back into the family of just energy of kind of like, I'm getting healthy, I'm finding a place for me, I'm kind of like not, and if they come back into the family for an event or something like that, usually it's a very short term, like I'll be there for grandma's funeral, I'll be here for grandpa's funeral or so-and-so's or whatever else, but that's it. And as soon as they can, they're gone again. Because a lot of times that's really the family just start, as soon as they come back, it's like the old energy is right there. It's like, boom, here we go again. And so, and a lot of times if they don't go to the funeral, not only their family members, but family friends or whatever else start like making them feel guilty. Like, I can't believe you didn't come to grandma's funeral. I can't believe that you didn't do this. And it's one of those like, so they're heaping more guilt and shame on them, and it's overwhelming. So a lot of times like you have to kind of like leave everybody. It's kind of like we got to leave the whole area and get out of this so that they can really get healed. This is really important. I will tell you kind of like a lot of times it can be so much easier to kind of feel like you have a voice in things, but a lot of times that scapegoat never feels like they really have a voice or anybody's listening to them until they're gone, and then people start seeing it for themselves, or they'll start seeing a different side of it. So that can be like a, okay. One of the things is a lot of times the narcissistic or the abuser is really emotionally not able to kind of regulate their own emotions. And so they have to kind of throw all the negative energy to that scapegoat. And so it's kind of like as soon as one scapegoat is gone, they've got to find another one. They can't be without a scapegoat. They can't be without someone to blame everything on, because like I said, they can't take the blame from themselves or they'll just crazy. I will tell you kind of one of the things is that scapegoat really must get out and kind of find their own way, and how they do it is totally up to them. And like I said, therapy is number one, kind of getting that energy off of them of kind of like what they've been grown up in. And a lot of times that narcissistic, for my client, it started at a very, very young age. So that's all she's ever known. And so it's kind of that energy of like becoming like a whole new person, like, you know, you're whatever age, I think she's like early 20s or mid 20s, and she's like having to almost like rebirth herself in this whole energy of, she's always been taught that everything is her fault. Not everything's her fault. So she has a lot of like anxious anxiety of like everything's going to mess up and it's going to be blamed on me. And so there's a lot of rethinking and readjusting of her own thinking to kind of come into this new way of thinking, this new healed state for herself, and really allow this to come in and help her. I will tell you, this is really, really important. And I will say kind of the part is sadly, the kind of like the fear that the narcissistic or the abuser has towards the scapegoat is usually infectious. And as they kind of push that family member out even more, because now you've kind of gotten some new way of thinking and we don't want that here. It's one of those, there's a lot of like negative energy still kind of like energetically that we have to deal with her. And kind of the abuser treats the scapegoat as like, you've left me, you know what I'm saying? Like, you've gotten away and now you're getting healed, and it's one of those, but it's your fault. You caused all of this. You're the one who's the bad person, not me. Like I said, they're still always constantly blaming that person and trying to find that scapegoat, trying to always find a safe place, and always trying to find people on their side. Because it's one of those, for years, no one's been on their side. So they're always kind of like looking for that. And sometimes they can look for that in some really harsh places, or people that end up like supporting them for a period of time and then turning like their family members were. And so it's kind of like they're turning into that survival mode. I've got to kind of like hang on for dear life to anybody who's willing to support me, or even just, I don't mean like support financially. What I mean is like support emotionally, can be a really big one as they go through all of this. So it's kind of really important. That kind of that crucial role is kind of learning and upgrading your energy, that it's not your fault, and kind of getting new insight and new ideas about this can really be a great way to do it. But I will guarantee you, kind of the number one thing is to get some help from a therapist. Let's do some angel cards, and let's get us a deeper insight into all of this. Like the one on the very back is popping forward. Romance. You have got to learn how to love yourself. If you've been the scapegoat in your family for any reason whatsoever, learning how to love you and learning how to support yourself is going to be like invaluable. You have got to learn that more than anything else, to love and support you. Because if you're always looking at from the outside, and that's what you were taught as a child, like always look for that support on the outside, you have got to love you and look for that support on inside of you. Spiritual growth. This is a major one. Getting into that, taking care of you, learning new ways to upgrade your thinking, your thoughts, your energy, your words, because so many scapegoats deal with this for years, sometimes 20, 30, 40 years, and it never ends until you start kind of seeing it differently. And once you do, and you start healing, your spirit will start growing and amazingly makes some amazing adjustments and changing your energy of what you've got to upgrade in you and the changes that you have to make in you. Our last one is nature. This is just kind of the nature of being in a narcissistic family. Everybody kind of at some point will take time as each. Sometimes the scapegoat will become the golden child for a period of time, and the golden child become the scapegoat for a period of time. But I will tell you, 90% of the time you are stuck in your position and you can't change it. It's only the narcissistic or the abuser that can change that energy for you. And a lot of times they like the way it is. The golden child is just kind of taught like to constantly feed them affirmations. You're a great person, you're a great person, and you're do this. The scapegoat is always the one that they heap the negative energy on. The middle child kind of, we call it the middle child because they're always kind of in the middle of being the golden child and being the scapegoat. So they're kind of always in that middle ground and always looking for like footing. So they're always looking for something stable to feel secure with. So every part of a narcissistic family or an abusive family has a space, but I guarantee you it is your right and your responsibility to yourself to get out and get some help or assistance so that you can heal you and move forward and heal your spirit, your body, and your mind. I thank you so much for joining me today, and I know that we'll be talking again soon.